We are born free.
And we will die free.
The time in between, though,
That's complicated.
in that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Odermatt.
All right, my guest today on Finding Freedom is Magatte Wade. She is the Senegalese founder and CEO of SkinIsSkin.com. And she's here today to discuss the power of capitalism in Africa and the pitfalls of socialism around the world. I really want to focus, of course, on her story and, the obstacles and different things she has overcome to achieve and to find success. Ms. Wade also serves as the director of Atlas Network's Center for African Prosperity. She launched SkinIsSkin.com. It is a staple at Whole Foods. It is a lip balm with a mission and dedicated to reducing discrimination while creating jobs and economic prosperity in her home country of Senegal. Magatte, welcome to Finding Freedom.
Well, thank you for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. I think we have a slight delay, but that's okay. We'll be able to fix that in editing. But first question, really just, I gave an intro view in the opening there, but why don't you give an introduction of yourself? Tell my audience some background on you. What your life was like growing up.
Yeah, so again, my name is Magatte Wade, and I was born in Senegal, the west coast of Africa. So basically, I think when you're talking about, I would today call myself an entrepreneur, but when it comes to really what I do and what I stand for in this world, at the 10,000 feet level, my goal, my life's long goal and purpose is to work for a world in which Black people, especially Black African people, become recognized, innovators, co-creators in the world of innovation in all the realms of life. So, and the way I have come to realize that will happen is going to be through entrepreneurial value creation primarily, and then all of that obviously led me to. So, I think when you talk about, hey, tell us a little bit more about you. Yes, I was born in Africa. I'm an entrepreneur. Somebody who has a fond respect and devotion to the concept of free markets and free enterprise. But I think the story I would like to talk to you more about is about how that came to be, because I was not always that person who understood the concept of free markets. I didn't even understand the concept of entrepreneurship. For me, you just get up and start a business and entrepreneurship in a way just can happen in a vacuum. And for the longest time, I thought that, maybe Africa, the region to which I belong on this earth, just happened maybe to be a doomed region, because otherwise, how come, the region is the poorest region on earth to this day. So it's more of that story that I would be most interested to share with your audience today, because for me, it's the bigger story of my life. Not sure if that makes sense to you.
That's the story that I want to hear. Hey, we're going to take a real quick minute here. I want to tell you guys about a really cool service. It's for expats. It's for location independent and international entrepreneurs seeking financial freedom. It's really for anybody concerned about their privacy, which honestly, in today's world, it should be everybody. Now, if you remember back on episode 308, titled Living Virtually in South Dakota with Dallas, the Privacy Postmaster. During that episode, Dallas told us about his service called Privacypost Io. Now, what is Privacypost Io? It is a privacy by default virtual mail and business center. Now, the services that are included are virtual mail, a professional business address, privacy trust services, company formation, Portugal D7 residency, and virtual domicile in the privacy respecting an income tax-free state of South Dakota. Now, Privacypost.io protects you from third parties, overreaching government agencies, and complicit cloud platforms invading your private, personal, and business information. Privacy is freedom of association, expression, commerce, and mobility. Privacypost.io is your partner in freedom. Go to privacypost.io for more information, and make sure to tell them that you heard about them on Finding Freedom. How did that come to be? Take us through that.
Yeah. So what happened is, like I said, I was born in Senegal, west coast of Africa. My family, as soon as my mom was done breastfeeding, because, I come from a family where the tradition is to usually breastfeed at least for a couple of years. And so as soon as I was done with breastfeeding, my parents decided to emigrate to Europe in search of a better life, in search of a better economic life. So they left me behind with my grandma, because they did not know how that journey would go. Because, although they did not have to go through a risky journey themselves to go to Europe, like unfortunately many Senegalese people have to do to this day, having to pack themselves into little fishermen's boats, trying to cross the ocean over to Europe in hope for a job, in search, they're going because they're hoping to find a job. My parents did not have to do that. Thankfully for them, they were both, quite good educated people, and they went with normal and more, legal route, which is not a dangerous route. So they were lucky from that standpoint. But still, they didn't know how it would go and if it would work and if it would be, so they left me behind with my grandma. But after a few years, when they discovered that, when they finally felt that this was going to be they were going to be stable, they called for me. So when they called me to be reunited with them, at that point they were living in Germany. They first had gone to France, then to Germany, and so Germany is where I reunited with them. And so when I arrived there, I have to tell you, Matt, something happened in my little.
I'm just curious. Sorry to.
Yes. That's okay. Please.
How much time between? So how long did you not see your parents for? When you were left behind and then met them in Germany?
It's not that I didn't see them. Yeah, 5 years or so basically. My mom, I haven't seen much between that time frame. But my father is the one who would try to come back anytime he could to come visit with me. So it was a time of 5 years, right? And so behind their back, of course, I was very much a free range child. I like to say it that way. My grandma pretty much let me do what it is that I wanted to do. She was a firm believer, I guess, in more or less in what you guys here would call the Montessori model today. This concept of within a prepared environment, let the child do what the child wants to do, and the child, learns at their own pace. It was nothing as, like I said, structured as you might know in the Western world, but it was very much the same principle. And that's actually a very pre-colonial Africa way of bringing up children, just working with a child's space. So in any case, it was around 5 years after, since they had left, but I then went to reunite with them. And so when I arrived in my brain of this, 7-year-old little girl, I looked around me, and the first feeling that came to me, I will never forget, was I was just like, how come they have this and we don't? Right? This just simple question of how come they don't have this and we don't? And I think what I was referring to was just this ease of life that surrounded me. When, for example, bath time came, shower time came, my mom would say, hey, time to hop in the shower. And I'm like, I'm not hopping in the shower. What do you mean it's ready? The shower is ready. Where's the bucket of water? Because back home, my grandma would have to warm up some water on the stove or on, and then mix that, put it in a big bucket and mix it with some cold water. And then they would have to lift it up to the shower area. And there with a little pot, I could then take my shower. So it's a whole production to just think about taking a shower and going to take, and so here she's like, And then she would be like, I'm like, where's the bucket? She's like, there's no bucket here, you silly. Hop in the shower. And I hop in, and here I am turning, all you have to do is you turn the knobs, water's coming down. Depending on how you turn the knobs, like it's hot, cold, you can do it exactly what you want. And voila, you have the most amazing shower with not too much work to have to put up for it. And I was like, whoa. Same thing with, just like all of these paved roads everywhere, right? Compare back to back home, where most of the roads were not paved, sandy roads, and always having your feet getting ashy, your shoes get ruined in no time. I mean, and it was like that about everything. You walk into these stores and they have AC and everything is so beautiful, so neatly aligned, and the choice of in everything. And I was just like, whoa. So that question of how come they have this and we don't, eventually never left me. It was just like one of those big questions that as a kid you can have, and it never leaves you until you find the answer. So it really led my whole life. And then the question became, how is it that some countries like mine are poor while other countries like the United States, like Germany, are rich? That's what the question became. And it was a question that if I didn't find the answer, I could not have peace. So my whole life was about finding that answer. So as I was on the quest to finding that answer, of course, I heard all types of answers to that question. Some people with a very straight face would say, oh, darling, it's not your fault. It's just because, black and brown people, the IQ theory, they're just not the same. They're not equal. It's not your fault. It's you didn't win the gene pool, right? And other people would say, oh, if you look, for example, at the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, 17 goals, you'll find that for them, some people will say, oh, you're poor because you're malnourished. And that doesn't make any sense to me, because some saying you're poor because you don't have access to enough education. I'm like, do you know that most of the street sellers that you will see in Dakar, the capital city of Senegal, most street sellers are actually have some various type of PhDs and master degrees, right? And we joke in my country that your first job as a graduate is going to be a street seller. So this idea that, it's because lack of education is what, keeps you poor. It made no sense. So I've heard some people say, oh, if only we give you shoes, it's going to fix your poverty. Tom, shoes. So, Tom, Matt, I've heard this nonsense. I'm sorry, I want to call you Tom, John. Matt, because if your last name Matt is John, and I know John, so I go by, so excuse me, but so, John, I've heard it all. It was all over the place, but everything we talked about made no sense, because let's say even the IQ theory, or, why is it that when the same person, same background, same education, we talk about the same person, when that person gets to leave a place like mine, a country like mine, and travels across to some other country like Germany or the United States, how come that same person, voila, now can accomplish his or hers greatness? Same person. So at that point, it's telling me very much that it's not about this person. There's something else here that's at play, something else that is not about this person, but it seems like it's more about this is to be in, the place they came from and the place they just landed in. So that was starting to hone in, that whole thing of there's something else that I'm just not hearing. And I kept looking. And eventually, one thing leading to another, we were in Germany for a couple of years. Then after 2 years, my family deciding that we're going to stay in Europe after all, they decided that it was time for the family maybe to move to France, because it would be an easier connection with my back home, because we used to be a French colony. So for many different reasons, the family decided it would be better to go back to France. So we went back to France, and there, continued these, did a business, went to business school in France. And after business school, I decided that France was going to be too small for my ambitions, because while France has really served us well from the standpoint of a good education and all types of good things that I will never, spit on, I also knew darn well that, social mobility in France is very limited. especially for people who look like me and have my background. So, for as a Black woman from the African diaspora, I just knew that my options would be very limited. And it was not just me, by the way. My white French friends, same thing. If you happen to be born in a family that is not very bourgeois family or anything like that, your chances at evolving, at climbing the social ladder are also going to be diminished. It's just one of these places where the social mobility percentage is one of the lowest. So I decided at that point that I did not want to be. France was going to be too small for my ambitions. I knew that I'm a hardworking person, and I wanted to accomplish what they call the American dream. And when you grow up in France, it's funny because being Black in France, a lot of the American movies, they like to show you, besides the like the usual iconic movies, they like to oftentimes focus on all of these negative parts of America, right? So for the longest time, John, you'll laugh. I was scared to actually travel anywhere from the South in America. It took me years in this country to even accept a stopover in Atlanta, Georgia, because for me, Atlanta, Georgia meant lynching of Black people, and my whole life they made it sound like that's what happens to Black people in America. Right. So for the longest time, I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to these places. And but you then also had these other movies, Starkey and Hutch, and all these movies where I would see this beautiful Golden Gate Bridge, and a lot of movies also like 90210, for example, stupid thing. But you watching this thing, and as a young person, you're like, whoa, this is a place of freedom. Young people driving cars at age 16. In France, you would never think of that. I mean, the prosperity that you could see in these movies. In France, having a car, yeah, right. I think even the bourgeois kids did not have access to such prosperity. And I think it's something that's important to say. There's the middle class in France. Actually, many people that could be considered not so like poor or such would be actually middle class in France. So just to give you a scale of the type of prosperity we're talking about when we're talking about America compared to a country like France. But in any case, so you see, all of it just made me want to go. I was just like, wow, there's this other place out there that seems A, so big, B, I see all types of people being able to achieve their American dream, this big dream. It seems like there I won't be limited by my background. And I wanted to go. I just felt I was just called by the freedom that was steeping from this place. And so I came when I could roll around.
Quick question for you. So you were talking earlier about noticing really the system that was missing when you look at your home in Africa, comparing it to France and Germany and the U.S., that free market system. At what point did you come to understand or come to realize that it was that free market that was the system? Had you realized it yet when you started, before you started to want to go to America? Did you understand why America was different?
No. All I knew of America was that it was this beautiful place where it felt like people could come out of nothing and turn into celebrities, turn into big entrepreneurs, turn into big, name it. That's more what I was attracted to. And I just felt free, right? Where kids can drive at 16 and they can hang out with their friends. That's what attracted me to this country. So I came here, and then I was first. I just finished business school in France, and so when I came, I first landed in Columbus, Indiana, middle of nowhere, America, which I still love that place. Still have so many ties there. And my friends would laugh. My French friend are like, "Oh, really? Oh, yeah. You see, Columbus, Indiana, a place that has more cows more cows and churches than people." And I said, "Well, but this is a great place for me to get started in, because first of all, this is where I had to learn to speak American. Because when I first arrived, I was speaking British. Because in France, you learn British, you don't learn American. Yeah. So this is where I had to really relearn my so-called English. And also I'm glad I went through the middle of America experience, because it taught me something about Americans that later, because my life would take me to the coastal elites of America, San Francisco first, then New York, and today the third coastal elite, which is Austin, Texas. If I didn't go through that, I would never have known what it is to truly, that Midwestern, true American values and sensibility. So I'm very glad for that. But eventually, after 9 months, it was very clear to the people who sponsored me for my visa for work that I had totally outlived and outperformed my job. I had outgrown my responsibilities in their company. I did things way faster than they thought one could do it. I was, I think, a year and 4 months in advance of what they were planning, the time it would take me to do what they wanted me to do. So at some point they say, look, we could be selfish and keep you here with us, but we think you've got a much bigger, future. And they remain they are still this day my first American family. We just came back from visiting them again a month ago, actually. So I'm very still attached to that place. But anyway, so I come to California. At that point, I left them then to come to California, because during a trip back here to California, we could say I left my heart in San Francisco. So I went back to San Francisco for love. It was the right time. And there, I started as a headhunter in finance, working for companies like Google, when a few people could pronounce the word Google. And it was this tiny place, in the Bay Area, and then having to work for companies like Netflix and getting lost so many times when I had to go visit them as my customer, to the tiny little office in San Jose, right, South San Jose. It was just amazing. And then no one could predict back then that these companies would become household names, right? But you see, while I was in the Silicon Valley, and the reason why I explained it to you this way, John, is because to show you that it didn't happen automatically for me to be like, oh, the free markets are this. It was just a process of, in a way, experiences, but eventually led me to the ideas. Eventually, at some point, what I witnessed along the way, I eventually came across people who had words for what I was experiencing, who had words for these differences and discrepancies I was seeing. And so This is what I'm explain. So I went there, and so I was there in the heydays of the dot-com boom. I mean, it was such a fascinating time, and really, I was very privileged to experience this what to be an entrepreneur means. This ability to create something out of nothing. People meeting at the Palo Alto Creamery, and on the back of a napkin, literally writing down an idea, sharing back and forth, and then, started talking to other people, and then discovering this ecosystem of the entrepreneur, made of the entrepreneur himself, of course, the big four CPA firms, the lawyers, the VC firms. I mean, that ecosystem, and starting to understand that even there is something that I didn't even see that in France, to tell you the truth. This it was such a beautiful ecosystem and so vibrant. And so something already was starting to brew. And then I think I became so inspired by these entrepreneurs, by these people who just had this ability to say, you know what, I'm not happy about this or that, or I'm super inspired by this and that. If I'm not happy about this, or I'm super inspired by this, someone else must be. Let's take it to more people. Let's build a company around it. Let's take this product or this to the greater population. Because if I feel this way, someone else is surely going to feel this way. So this attitude of just not waiting for anyone and just going for it. That too was not something I saw a lot in France, and definitely not much in my own country oftentimes. And so that was interesting. And eventually I just took on to that attitude of, hey, let's do it. And fate made it around then that I had gone back to Senegal. At that point, it's been 4 years since I've been in the US and hadn't gone home yet. And but when I went, I took my husband with me, who was French, and I say was because my husband unfortunately passed away, a few years after that. But I took him home to show him where I came from. He heard about. Thank you. He heard about this beverage I was talking about, the hibiscus drink, and all of that. And we went home just to realize that nowhere around could I, it's not like I couldn't see it, but what happens is in countries like mine and in cultures that have traditionally dominated, and we see that everywhere. We've seen that with even with Chinese as well as with Indians before the Indians have started becoming so like prominent, especially on the tech side. But there are a lot of us who share this feeling of complex of inferiority, if I can call it this way. And the way it manifests itself is everything that comes from the West must surely be good. But that which is indigenous to us is something that's just that indigenous. So meaning it's still below, meaning you want to hide it. You want to hide it because now you want to show the world that you've evolved. See, these are very complex, psychologies. In any case, what it manifests in is in a country like mine, it became that if you've made it, you don't drink the hibiscus drink, which is traditional and indigenous to us. You drink Coca-Cola, you drink Pepsi, you drink Fanta, products like that. So that's for the top of the pyramid. The bottom of the pyramid, right? The bottom of the pyramid, because all of us humans want dignity. The bottom of the pyramid is saying, we can't afford the real, true Western brands, so we're going to go for the knockoff brands of these products. And so you see how then in the middle, my indigenous product gets squeezed out. And as it gets squeezed out, in this case, this ingredient we use for it, the hibiscus, the women who used to grow it now have to move to the cities, leave the countrysides behind, and get themselves into this cycle of poverty. And even when you hear about sex trafficking, all of this oftentimes also has its origins in that. So in any case, when I saw that, I was very pissed. But remember, I got this little bug from California, from Silicon Valley, from the entrepreneurs. Something pisses you off, or something inspires you, you do something about it. This concept of criticize by creating. The best form of criticism is by creating something. So that's when I decided, you know what? I'm going to start a company. It's going to be a brand. We're going to make it so cool and hot in the West, but by the time we get back in Africa, everyone is going to be like saying, we want to drink this. We heard that's a new cool thing to drink. Beyond Pepsi and Coca-Cola, this is what cool Americans are drinking. And I was going to do reverse colonialism on my people. So this is when John and I started a company. Came back to the US after that trip. I had a product in mind. I even had a brand name in mind. Now I need to find a partner. And at that point, it became clear we needed to set up two companies, three actually. One sister company in Senegal, one sister company in the US, and a bigger one, and a mother company in the Cayman Islands for various reasons. There, what I discovered, John, is, wait a second. On this side, it takes me 20 minutes, faster depending on how fast I can type, to set up my LLC online. Mm-hmm. And within minutes gets my, all my documents from the Secretary of State back. Compare that 20 minutes or less to almost, back in the days, almost 2 years.
Wow.
To legitimately register my business there. Here, I'm like, wait a second. I can open my bank account for the business, and I don't need to have $10,000 or like some ridiculous amount like that for me back then. Like, I have to in my country? Wait a second. And then, up till then, John, you have to understand, I thought that things were it was just the way it is. And maybe we don't have as many businesses as we should because it was the way it was. But when I saw that, when I talked to you about living it by experience, I was in such a place to compare apples to apples. And there it started to down on me. Because everywhere I looked, all the way even to the labor laws. In Senegal, if an employee is stealing from me, like I can tell you, I have this example right now. One of our employees is taking us to the labor court. And the reason why she's doing that is because she has been, we have a lab in Senegal, we manufacture our products. This is now my third company, but now we manufacture in Africa. We don't just source raw material, we manufacture. So you hire people, of course, and in the lab, you have to be really focused and concentrated, especially at the weighing station, because 1 gram difference or mistake can mean a huge difference in the output. The lip balm maybe not looking the way it's supposed to look like, not having the same texture it's supposed to have. It can be a disaster. 1 gram different can make a disaster. So you have to be very careful. There, no one listens listens to music. They're actually usually paired. So because, you watch each other, because sometimes you can just be in your thoughts and forget something. So it is a very critical step of the manufacturing process. But we're told she listens to music, doesn't do her work the way she's supposed to do it. We ask her many times not to. And also being a really not a team player, like many, many issues on the soft side as well as on the hard side, skills-wise. Mm-hmm. And so finally, what do you do with someone like that? You have to let them go, don't you? So we let her go. And so basically she is going after us at the labor court because she said that I did not have a right to fire her. There was no big mistake because the way it is in Senegal, pretty much if you fire somebody and they say, I was not supposed to be fired for whatever reason, then they take you to court. And when they do, they don't even have to be represented by a lawyer, even the way the employer have to. It's some type of union person that's going to represent them. And so anyway, it's a very complicated system, but eventually now I'm in this court thing and it's going to probably last years of us going back and forth. And the best way to avoid these things is to build a file on each employee. And even then, that won't stop you from the issue I'm having right now. So basically in Senegal, because we follow French civil law, is even in business, you in a way are married to your employee for good or for bad. This concept of at-will employment that we have in the US that gives me extreme flexibility, I don't have in Senegal. In Senegal, if I want to even close my company from one day to another and I say I'm going to close it, the employees can go complain to the labor court and say, well, I don't agree that she had to close her company. So at that point, you have to convince the government, the court in this case, that yes, I need to close my company. And by the time you do all of that, oftentimes, there's going to be something that you have to leave at the table.
So they can make you, the government can force you to keep operating your company, even if you're operating at a loss. They can make you stay in business because the employees have gone and said, yes, we need this company to stay in business.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. So you have to make those cases. And like this girl, I know that even though she was at fault, I am probably going to end up paying her a few months in damages since she was fired. So you see how costly it is. And it's like this about everything. So eventually I'm like, wow, I think I'm understanding now what the problem is, because eventually I'm understanding you're poor because you have no money. You have no money because you have no source of income. A source of income for most of us is a job. Where do jobs come from? The private sector, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs. So then don't you think that if you want more and more businesses to be born and to thrive, that you should try to offer them what we call we should. Like with anything you want to thrive, you have to give it a good environment. But in this case, it turns out that there are some very serious indexes that measure how hard or easy it is to do business anywhere in the world. And there you realize on those indexes, whether it's the doing business index of the World Bank or the Heritage Foundation Economic Freedom Index, you see index after index that it is harder to do business in almost anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa except for 8 countries, actually for all of the continent except for 8 countries, than it is to do business anywhere in Scandinavia. It means technically that all Scandinavian countries, any Scandinavian country is more capitalist than almost any African nation except for 8 African nations. And those African nations, by the way, are doing better than the rest of the pack. That, John, was my answer. This is why we're poor. We're poor because African countries happen to have the suckiest business environment the world knows. And economists' words, you would call that, we have the least economic freedom. Basically, the free markets are not present. It's not in Africa. This was my answer. And if you don't have a good business climate,
I'm curious to get your.
Entrepreneurs are not fools.
let's take a quick break in today's show. I got a brief message, but a really important message. Obviously, in today's crazy world with governments going tyrannical across the globe, from Australia to Austria, and even right here in the United States, it's more important than ever not only to have your own personal mobility and ability to move around to make income wherever you move, but also to protect your wealth. And our friend Mikhail Thorup of the Expat Money Show is the best of the best at helping you do that. And he has a podcast, the Expat Money Show. You should definitely subscribe and listen to that. But today, what I'm here to talk to you about is some free materials, some free information. They're going to help you to sleep like a baby, knowing that no one will ever raid your personal Fort Knox. What Mikhail has put together, it is a free infographic report. It's 19 international strategies to protect and grow your wealth. It's going to help you to safeguard and grow multi-generational wealth for your dependents, to get ironclad protection so strong that no lawyer will ever consider suing you. Really, it's going to make creditors, terrified to even look at your personal assets, and it'll help you to defend yourself from governments trying to steal your money through taxation. As libertarians, we know taxation is theft, but guys, arm yourself with something that is going to help you to fight back against those overreaching, coercive governments. You can go to expatmoneyshow.com/lions to pick up that report today. That's expatmoneyshow.com/lions, and go there today and get your free report. Curious to get your opinion on what you think really like the root cause of that is. My speculation from the outside would be possibly due to, foreign money from the United States and other countries coming in, maybe causing some corruption in the upper levels of government, sort of incentivizes that system to stay in place because it keeps those in power as the haves. They get what they want. They live a fairly comfortable life, and there's no incentive for them to create policies and systems that would help, the poor and middle class to thrive.
That's a very good explanation. But let me take you back to the origins of origins. Because this is something that what you just talked about transpired afterwards. But you see, for most of us, including me for the longest time, when we think about Africans, when we think about the history of Africans, Black Africans in Africa itself, we tend to think about it only, our reference point starts usually with slavery. I have noticed that for me, it was something unconscious, and I've noticed it's the same for most people. When you think about Africa, the story or the history of Africa, for most of us, it starts with slavery. But there were people there before the white man ever set foot on the continent. And who were these people? What were they doing? How were they living? Well, turns out, especially when you look at the work of, there's now a big body, there's now, not a big, but a nascent body of scholars that have been researching all of that, especially from the economic standpoint. And my favorite of them is Professor George Ayite, Ghanaian economist, amazing guy. He looked where most other people didn't look. He looked at pre-colonial Africa. And page after page after page of his biggest piece of work, which is called Africa Unbound, he's showing that basically pre-colonial Africans were practicing the free markets and the free enterprise. That we had some of the most sophisticated trade routes, as well as trading setups. So pre-colonial Africans were free enterprise people. They were free marketeers. And the research shows it, and it's coming out more and more from other scholars that was the case. Then came slavery, which we all know what happened, and blah, blah, blah. Then colonialism, all of that. But see, towards the end of colonialism, when most African countries were about to get their so-called independence, we're now talking about the late 50s, early 60s. Remember, John, what was happening back then? We were at the height of the greatest ideological battle of all times, as represented on one end by the concept of freedom, primarily, represented by the Western Bloc, facing various concept of statism, communism or socialism as primarily represented by the Eastern Bloc, right? Remember, we were like in the Cold War, all of that. So these two big blocs on the northern hemisphere were fighting for influence to implant their ideology, and so they were fishing for influence on the southern hemisphere, and equatorial, place countries. And so, but when they were doing that, what happened, at least for us in Africa, we said we're now just coming out of colonialism, which was a horrible time. Before that, we had slavery. So the African who fought for liberation, we're talking about Thomas Sankara, we're talking about Julius Nyerere, we're talking about all of these things, Rawlins in Ghana. So they're just coming out of this terrible phase of our continent, and now they're thinking, these two ideologies of fighting each other. On the west, we have a Western Bloc, we have an Eastern Bloc. Well, it turns out that the people who enslaved us and later colonized us happen to be Westerners. Therefore, their enemies are going to be our friends. That's when we went to bed with a Marxist socialist Leninist of the time. And as a matter of fact, many of these liberators, these African liberators, were actually trained in the Eastern Bloc. Many of us did not spend so much time in Africa, to tell you which. So, and they came together, almost all of them, without exception, except maybe Botswana, came together, and basically there is now an allegiance being made to Marxist socialism. Done. It's like the West enslaved us. Whatever they're promoting must be evil. And in this case, they're promoting capitalism. So we are not going to go for capitalism. So when they did that, we made the fatal mistake. We threw the baby out with the bathwater, period. And so now you have these African nations that are finally supposedly free and independent. And guess what? Most of them have socialist presidents. The few that are not socialist, the communist presidents. Fatal mistake. And as you know, it's not just an ideology. Ideologies turn into, manifest into policies. So we all know that socialist and communist policies have never bred prosperity anywhere. They still are trying, but it hasn't worked anywhere. Even a communist China, when they became serious about wanting prosperity, they had to create the SEZs, special economic zones, which are among some of the most free market zones there are in the world. When they wanted prosperity, they had to bite the bullet and go for capitalism for the economic system. So anyway, we had done that. This is why for the past 60 years, we had absolutely nothing to show for it. Nothing. And in the process, the West is looking at this and being like, oh, gee, isn't it terrible? Look at the poverty over there. We must send them foreign aid. And so as they send the foreign aid, our leaders are thinking, wait a second, I can buy a chateau in the south of France. I can buy, when my daughter gets married, I have 747s flying around the world full of my best friends and the champagne on the cargo section. I mean, insane stuff. This is where most of the aid money goes, foreign aid. And a lot of the rest of the money goes straight back into the consultants who are part of the aid industry. We're talking here, all the folks, all the NGOs who are involved in supposedly, the poverty world. Watch Poverty Inc. It's on Amazon and Netflix and many other places. It will show you exactly that poverty and aid is an industry, and we're talking trillions of dollars. It goes to everybody except for the people who need it. So what happened in the process is, all of a sudden, through this process of foreign aid, what you have done is you have done two things. You take the incentives from the leaders to make sure that their constituents, their people, their citizens become prosperous, because if we stay poor, the money keeps coming in and they keep buying chateaus. And at the same time, you also built a mentality of dependency in a lot of people, because that's what happens after 60 years of just waiting for waiting for help. You lose some of your. Not everybody, thankfully, and people still have a fighting spirit, but damage it this way. So, John, when you ask, what do you think happened? This is what happened. And this is that's what my upcoming book called The Heart of a Cheetah is going to be talking about, kind of taking people back to our root history, that we were free marketeers and free enterprise. And then after colonialism, that what happened happened there and how we sided with with Marxist socialists and how it got us to where we are today. But today, finally, I think the story is finally coming out. People are finally understanding, first of all, the relationship between prosperity and the economic freedom and the free markets, and also understanding that we like also what can be done about this. So I don't want to leave the audience feeling, oh my God, gee, isn't it terrible? What do we do? Well, truth is, there are some amazing, well-proven steps that can be taken, anywhere from policy reforms to just this radical concept of startup cities, where instead of trying to do piecemeal reform legislation, you will say, we're going to go to a piece of land that primarily doesn't have too many people on it. And just like Dubai, 110 acres of land, you're realizing that Sharia law is not the best law, for commercial and businesses. Then you're saying, we're going to do the best in law type from around the world, which is primarily British common law, and saying, we on this piece of land, we're not going to do Sharia law for business, but we're going to do British common law, hire retired British common law people so that they can educate the law. And from there, voila, within 20 years, Dubai, 110 acres of land that we had none on it except sand, and it was a desolate part of the world. Today, Dubai entered the top 10 rank of the financial international finances of the world, and this has proven to work anywhere it's been done. Singapore.
I was just going to insert there. I think that Dubai is a great example. I think that's going to become, maybe not to that same extreme, to create multiple Dubais, but it's going to become easier and easier for communities to really grow outside of their governments and to create prosperity. When you look at what's happening with Web3 and DeFi and cryptocurrency, so it's some really, really exciting times, I think, are ahead for the entire world. I mean, it's kind of like the phase we're in right now with COVID in the United States. There's a lot of unrest and a lot of obviously division, and I think it's like that in a lot of parts of the world, created by how the governments have reacted to the COVID crisis. But I think on the other side of this is the unimaginable prosperity for the human race.
No, I think this is I am so in line with you. That's why I'm so excited for all of us humans that happen to be alive in this particular time. This chaos, I think it's going to breed innovation, betterness. I think a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people who have been sleeping, fallen asleep, because prosperity does that oftentimes, especially in prosperous nations. It puts you to sleep. And then poverty, for people who live in poverty or in poor nations, it renders them, if you're so poor that it doesn't matter, you become almost like lethargic and you don't do much. And if you're so prosperous that it doesn't matter, then you just take it for granted and you just also fall asleep and you become lethargic as well. I think this has woken people up on either side of, that they find themselves in. And people are questioning, people are waking up. I feel like everywhere people are waking up and we're uniting in this being not woke, but awake. And so that, I think, it's really exciting. And we have so many tools at our disposition, the greatest of tools being this human brain and this human creativity. So I'm just very excited for the future. And I intend for my continent to make the right turn along with everybody else. And I'm just personally very excited. But I think it's important for people to understand, to have a proper diagnostic, because only from there can you land on a good solution. So that's in a way my story, and it's really that moment in my life defined me. When I arrived in Germany, defined the rest of my life, and that's really why I'm even talking to you today. If I didn't have that question and I didn't pursue its answer, I would have been living like most people, thinking that, well, you're lucky you live in you're in a rich country, or you're not lucky because you're in a poor country. And even many entrepreneurs I see today, they don't really question, they don't really understand that entrepreneurship doesn't happen in a vacuum. I see so many people in Silicon Valley who have created beautiful companies, but for some reason I see them not speaking up for free markets. And actually, oftentimes I find that they don't understand. They don't even see the relationship between what they're able to accomplish and maybe the fact that they have more or less economic freedom. So I'm just finding it. So I think that's why I love coming and speaking to folks like you, because it gives us once again the chance to really take a pause for a minute and try to understand the correlations and connect the dots. And so many of us have not connected the dots, but once we start to connect the dots, what I have seen happen automatically is people get to work. And so the free markets are here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It is our only chance, has always been, always will be.
Absolutely. And it has been an absolute pleasure getting to speak with you here. I know my audience is absolutely going to love this this interview. We'll have to have you back on later on too. But before I let you go, if you would just plug anything else that you're working on or want to direct my audience to. And also, we really didn't get to talk at all about, Skin is Skin. If you could tell people about that, where they can buy it and all that good stuff.
No, thank you. So yes, first it's Skin is Skin. You just go to skiniskin.com, as in love is love, but skiniskin.com. And then there you get to buy the lip balms, and soon we're going to have hand balms as well as some other products. It's all made in Africa, because at some point I decided that relying only on just bringing in raw material from Africa was just not enough, and that we would have to move up the value chain of production, because that's where you have more money staying in the country. Our employees get better jobs, more stable jobs, and they also get to learn world-class standards of doing business and manufacturing, and it's just great exposure for everybody in general. So I wanted to break that fat roof ceiling that I feel oftentimes, especially the people in the West who care about us had, of like, we buy the raw ingredients from them, but we make the final products here. So that's Skin in. But beyond Skin is Skin, I obviously advocate, like I said, for the free markets. It's really at the center of my life and my work. And so as such, I'm the director for the Africa Center for Prosperity of the Atlas Network, the largest organization in the world, working to reduce barriers of entry for entrepreneurs. We're organized in a network of free market think tanks, and we invest in these think tanks. So it is end of the year. Anybody listening, we would very much appreciate you sending funds to Atlas Network, because the more you send funds there, the more we can finance more free market think tanks around the world, and in some of the most in some of the places that you would know needed the most. Obviously, many African countries. We've been doing some very good work in Afghanistan with some very, very courageous human beings who are running these think tanks in Afghanistan and other places like that. So this is a really remarkable organization. Again, think about them, atlasnetwork.org. And then the last but not least is because I discovered a new enemy on my battle for prosperity in Africa, and it is the fossil fuel, the no fossil fuel, the anti-fossil fuel zealots have manifested to be my worst enemy, in my work of trying to build prosperity in Africa. This silly idea, ruthless idea, reckless idea of trying to go cold turkey on fossil fuels by 2030. It is an absolute death warrant on the economic growth of African nations, especially. So I'm not going to sit around and just say nothing. We're not going to be the sacrificial lamb, of this climate issue. Between let's keep continuing fossil fuels where it's been, or no fossil fuels at all, even though renewables are nowhere where they could be useful to us, because being reliable and affordable, we know that renewables are not there. Well, there is still in between very senseless steps we can take, right? And I would like to direct us more towards those conversations. But right now, the anti-fossil fuel zealots are my biggest enemy, my biggest opponent on my path to building prosperity in Africa. So we are working on an offense campaign. We have some real clear targets of organization and also people, meaning like brain powers behind these ideologies. And so my plan is to unleash the African youth and women of Africa on one side, and on this side, the still sane people, and Lord knows there are many, many, many sane people, but we're organizing them in a campaign so that we can bring light to this, so that we can nip it in the bud and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Because there is just absolutely no way any one of us could justify hundreds of millions of people sliding straight back into poverty, and many of them also dying because somebody is completely alarmed by the climate and is saying to me, well, sorry, we use all of this to get to where we are today. Look at our prosperity. But you guys, sorry, it just happened to be that now we know that it doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. Earth matters, environment matters. That's not what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. But what matters here is that the so-called solution they think they found is not a solution. A solution that leaves 1.3 billion Africans, and I'm not even talking about the other people in the developing world, but just in Africa, a so-called solution that's going to leave behind 1.3 billion human beings is just not a solution. It's a crime, and it's immoral, and we can't let it go. So anybody who wants to join on that journey, we are actively working on it right now to make this happen, and we're just right now in the war room organizing. So for that, reach out to me directly, Magatte W, my first name, the first letter of my last name, magattew@gmail.com, and we can help see where we can plug you on this battle. It is everyone's battle. I believe we will win it, but I need everyone. We need everybody. We need everybody, but we will win it.
Yeah. Well, I for one, am a big supporter of fossil fuels. I work in the energy sector, big supporter of nuclear as well. And the path that they have cut out, the path that they have cut out going forward, leaving, or I don't understand why we're not talking about nuclear more as a solution globally. But either way, fossil fuels is a bridge. You can't do it without fossil fuels. So that's something that's going to have to be ingrained. But thank you for being so generous with your time today. This was really an enjoyable conversation, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with Magatte Wade. And this was one of my favorite shows I've done in a while. I mean, I love all my guests, but this was such a, it shouldn't be a unique topic, but it really is a unique topic, talking about the economics of Africa and the root cause of really what's transpired there and what has held that region back for so long. And it was really refreshing and educational to hear Miss Wade's take on it. And, it's really something that I plan on spending a lot more time looking into and learning about, and hopefully, finding ways to assist and help out in any way possible. Now, a couple things to get through here before the end of the show. First things first, I want to tell you guys about two of our patron sponsors, Good Morning Liberty. Nate and Charlie, two awesome guys. Good Morning Liberty. They've been killing it for years with a 5-day per week Liberty podcast. These are guys that really pride themselves in breaking down the news, current events, and putting it through a filter that makes it easy to understand, but also help you to talk about the news in a way that makes you sound smart, bringing it to your maybe non-libertarian friends with a libertarian bent, but not making you sound like you're some kind of nerd who can't relate to people. Nate and Charlie have a great show, and I really want to encourage you to go subscribe to Good Morning Liberty. Second, Tyler Colford, longtime supporter of us here in the Lions of Liberty. He is known on the music circuit as Crypto Man. Please go onto Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your music. Check out Crypto Man. He's got a lot of great music out there. He's a hardworking guy. He's busting his ass for liberty, and he's trying to bring libertarian culture into music. So please support a fellow hardworking libertarian. All right, let's get into announcements and things of that nature. Number one, today, if you're listening to this today, it is December 30th, okay? So that means there's 2 days left in the year. And there's 2 days to get 2 months free on a Lions of Liberty Patreon membership. So the way you can do that, this is an annual Patreon membership. So you pay 12 months. You pay the chunk, and you get 2 months free. That's at any level from $5 all the way up to $50. It's incredible value, guys. So go check out what we have there. And this is for new and old Patreon members. You can use it to upgrade too. And people have been doing that. So I know we have a lot of new listeners. I would encourage you guys we want you to stick around, obviously. Why not take advantage of this deal, save some money, and enjoy a year of the Pride with your friends. It's good stuff. All right. And last announcement, maybe most important announcement, but there's going to be a new Finding Freedom feed. It's been created. Of course, your episodes are still going to be in this Lions of Liberty feed forever and ever. Every Thursday, you get one published here, but you also get now a separate Finding Freedom exclusive feed where we'll have the show published every Thursday, and also every Tuesday, you're going to get a little throwback, a little remix. You're going to get some of the the top of the top interviews from the past, evergreen interviews airing on Tuesdays with some of my favorite guests. So we'll start that way, doing that on Tuesdays. I don't know what we'll do with it down the road, but trying to build up a following and build up subscribers, all that good stuff. So when it does launch, I'm going to be really promoting it on my Twitter. You can follow me at John Odermatt. Please do. I'll be promoting it on my Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. I'm just John Odermatt on those. So check me out there. And please subscribe. And once I start dropping content, I just recorded my episode 0, so it's going to be up very soon. Maybe if you're listening to this on the 30th, maybe today or tomorrow. I know it takes a little bit of time to get up on the Apple Music stuff. So anyway, it's happening fast, and I would very much appreciate your support. So that's all I got. A lot of announcements, a lot going on, a lot of exciting stuff. We at Lions of Liberty are very excited for what's to come in 2022, and we're looking forward to making to some events, meeting you guys, hanging out. Should be a good time. So hope everyone has a happy and a safe New Year. Get out there, celebrate, drink some champagne. Don't drink and drive. And have a good time. And always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.